مساء الخير. نبث الآن بصورة حية على صفحة المجلس العربي في فيسبوك. أنا الياس قطار، مسؤول النشر والتحرير في المجلس العربي للعلوم الاجتماعية. أهلا بكم وبكنا في حلقة النقاش التاسعة في سلسلة حلقات نقاش الذكرى العاشرة لتأسيس المجلس العربي للعلوم الاجتماعية بعنوان الانتماء إلى الغد، سرديات الفنون والخيال في مواجهة السلطة. تنظم هذه الحلقة بالشراكة مع الصندوق العربي للثقافة والفنون آفاق، ومؤسسة المورد الثقافي، ومؤسسة اتجاهات ثقافة مستقلة. بداية أرحب بجميع من انضم إلينا عبر منصة زوم وعبر صفحة المجلس في فيسبوك، حيث تبث هذه الحلقة بصورة حية الآن. تعقد هذه الحلقة باللغتين العربية والإنجليزية، مع ترجمة فورية إلى اللغات الإنجليزية والعربية والفرنسية للمسجلين والمسجلات عبر منصة زوم. للراغبين والراغبات في الحصول على ترجمة، يمكنكم ببساطة التوجه إلى خانة الترجمة أسفل زوم Interpretation، واختيار اللغة التي تريدونها. كيف ستسير الحلقة؟ البداية مع مقدمة تأطيرية لموضوعها، يليها عرض فيلمين قصيرين لضيفتنا الفنانة والمخرجة لاريسا صنصور، بعدها حوار مع لاريسا، ونختم بنقاش مفتوح مع جمهور المتابعين والمتابعات عبر زوم وفيسبوك. لذا ندعوكم بل نشجعكم على طرح أسئلتكم من خلال خانة سؤال وجواب Q&A Question et Réponse عبر زوم، وخانة التعليق كومنتير عبر فيسبوك. الآن أنقل الكلمة إلى إلينا نصيف، مديرة المورد الثقافي، والتي ستتولى تقديم موضوع الحلقة وتأطيره. تفضلي إلينا.
شكرا الياس، شكرا للجميع. سعيدة أن أكون معكم اليوم وأن أتكلم باسم 3 مؤسسات ثقافية إقليمية شريكة تقوم بتنظيم حلقتي نقاش ضمن برنامج حلقات نقاش الذكرى العاشرة لتأسيس المجلس العربي للعلوم الاجتماعية. الحلقتان 9 و10 كما قال الياس هما تحت عنوان الانتماء إلى الغد، سرديات الفنون والخيال في مواجهة السلطة. المؤسسات الشريكة هي الصندوق العربي للثقافة والفنون آفاق الذي تديره ريما المسمار، وريما للأسف ليست معنا وهي على سفر. ستحل مكانها اليوم مرال تشرين لتقوم بمحاورة المخرجة لاريسا صنصور. المؤسسة الثانية هي اتجاهات ثقافة مستقلة والتي يديرها عبد الله الكفري وهو معنا اليوم من بروكسل. ومؤسسة المورد الثقافي التي أتسلم أنا مسؤولية إدارتها منذ عام 2017. هنا لا يسعني سوى أن أذكر أني كنت إحدى أوائل العاملين في المجلس العربي للعلوم الاجتماعية في بيروت العام 2012، وقد تركت المجلس لإتمام العمل على الدكتوراه في الدراسات الثقافية، وأن عيده العاشر مناسبة عامة كما خاصة للاحتفال بالإنجازات العظيمة التي حققها المجلس خلال السنوات الأخيرة، ولتمكين الشراكات التي ستسمح للعلوم الاجتماعية بلعب دور مفصلي في فهمنا للمجتمع وللثقافة ولدور الفنون وأثرها فيه. عندما اجتمعنا ريما وعبد الله وأنا، أردنا أن نفتح من خلال حلقتي النقاش اليوم والشهر المقبل حوار يربط الثقافة والفنون بالعلوم الاجتماعية من ناحية الأسئلة التالية: سؤال الزمان والمكان، كيف نقرأ الماضي والحاضر من زاوية المستقبل في منطقتنا العربية وفي شتاتها؟ سؤال السرديات المقاومة في مواجهة السرديات المهيمنة، وقدرة هذه السرديات على إنتاج معنى يخرج عن الثنائيات المكبلة. سؤال السلطة بأنواعها ومفاهيمها وقدرة الحقل الثقافي والفني على مواجهة السلطة. وسؤال حول كيفية فهم المشاعر والعواطف من أجل فهم الإنسان والمجتمع وتجلياتهما الثقافية والفنية. ولأننا أردنا أن نبدأ النقاش من مدخل الأعمال الفنية، قسمنا الحوار إلى لقاءين موزعين على شهري تشرين الأول أكتوبر وتشرين الثاني نوفمبر. في الحوار الأول اليوم لم نجد أفضل من أعمال المخرجة الفلسطينية لاريسا صنصور، ونحن نتشرف بوجودها معنا اليوم لنفتح الحوار حول واقعنا الغائب ومستقبلنا الذي يملأه ماضينا. كيف نفهم هذه الزمانيات المتداخلة، وكيف نتصالح مع النوستالجيا لتصبح ذاكرتنا منتجة لغد ملتئم بدل ميراث الغياب الذي لا ينضب. في الحوار الثاني الشهر المقبل سندعو عدد من الباحثين في الفنون وفنانين من اختصاصات مختلفة لمناقشة هذه الإشكاليات. سيدير الحوار الباحث اسطفان ترنوفسكي. شكراً لحضوركم اليوم، وشكراً لريستا لمشاركتنا الفيلمين وحضورك معنا، وشكراً للمجلس العربي للعلوم الاجتماعية لبناء تحالف متين مع الثقافة والفنون. في معظم بلدان العالم تدعم مجالس العلوم والفنون من المال العام، أما في بلداننا العربية وفي غياب الاستثمار الرسمي الكافي في العلوم الاجتماعية والفنون، نقوم نحن كمؤسسات كما المجلس العربي للعلوم الاجتماعية بسد ثغرات كبيرة من خلال لعب أدوار هذه المجالس، ونتعاون معا من أجل خلق بيئة داعمة للبحث العلمي والبحث والإنتاج الفني. لكننا ما زلنا بحاجة إلى دعم الدولة من ناحية سن القوانين ووضع السياسات ورصد الأموال الكافية لإنتاج حركة علمية وثقافية عضوية معنية بمصلحة شعوبنا العامة. لن أطيل أكثر، أترككم الآن مجدداً مع الزميل الياس الذي سيقدم الأفلام.
شكرا إلينا، شكرا على هذه المقدمة وعلى هذا التأطير. الآن وكما ذكرنا في المقدمة التمهيدية نشاهد فيلمين قصيرين لضيفتنا لاريسا صنصور. الفيلم الأول هو نيشن ستيت، والفيلم الثاني هو المختبر إن فيترو. نبدأ أولاً بنيشن ستيت، ثم بعد الانتهاء من البث ننتقل إلى إن فيترو.
بتلحم.
إذا كان هذا الفيلم الأول الذي شاهدناه لتونا نيشن ستيت. طبعا ستحدثنا لاريسا أكثر عنه في خلال هذه الحلقة بعد أن نشاهد الفيلم الثاني. الآن ننتقل إلى الفيلم الثاني، وهو فيلم أطول نسبيا بعنوان إن فيترو أو المختبر. نشاهد هذا الفيلم أيضا الآن في غضون ثوان.
كل يوم بصحى على صوت الدندنة هاي، على صوت باطن الأرض. انت كمان سمعتي؟ لا
سمعته. تمتمت الصخر.
أنا بس بهرب من واقعنا تحت الأرض لما بضوي البستان وبسمع العصافير والنحل والفراش. انت كيف جيتي هون؟ من فوق الأرض؟
لا، لسه الوضع مش أمان. جيت من الأنفاق، بس الحشيش صار له سنين طالع. صلحوا قنوات المي، ما رح نستنى كتير. حتى المؤمنين رجعوا.
كتار منهم ما تركوا أصلاً. ما كانوا بدهم يتركوا أماكنهم المقدسة، هربونا ودعونا، وبعدها بكم من يوم قتلهم الطاعون.
كل واحد عنده وجهة نظر.
آخر شي استرجعنا كان أكم من شرنقة أو أكم من خلية نحل، بعدين فلتناهم في البستان عشان يرجعوا يخلقوا دورة حياة جديدة.
عمركم حاولتوا تعرفوا شو صار بالمحلات التانية؟
ما سمعنا من حدا من يوم ما نزلنا تحت الأرض. الباقيين كانوا بادين يعيشوا اللي احنا عشناه من زمان، بس كان واضح إنه ما في أي محل رح ينجح. الكوارث تتطور هون بسرعة. هذا المحل كان دايما مشحون، ونفس الشيء كان يحصل بكل محل لحد ما لحقونا كلهم ليوم لقيامي.
أنا تربيت على النوستالجيا، طعموني الماضي بالمعلقة، بدلوا لي ذكرياتي بذكريات ناس تانيين، ذكريات تظهر وكأنها شخصية وحميمة. أنا بعرف إنها مش حقيقية بس مغرية، زي الرسومات الخيالية بكتب الأطفال، وما إلها ولا أي علاقة بحياتي هون، زي بكتيريا انزرعت فيي.
كلنا تربينا على النوستالجيا تبعت حدا تاني. تجاربنا اختلطت بالقصص اللي سمعناها. ذكرياتك حقيقية زي ذكرياتي.
أنا ما بوافقك. الوجع اللي بتسببه هاي القصص مضاعف، لأنه الفقدان اللي بحسه ولا عمره كان إلي.
أنا نسيت عمرك، بس أنا فاهمة إنه مش سهل عليك تكوني مركبة من بقايا اللي ضلوا. أنت خلقتي بس لساتك مش قادرة تطلعي من الرحم.
أنا واعية إنكم استنسختوا الجينات، وإنه أنا مش أول أنا.
بس انت الوحيد اللي قدرت توصلي لحد هون، ومع كل هذا ما بتعرفي إلا الغياب.
الكل بضل يذكرني بهذا الاشي، بالمنفى اللي ورثته. أنا مش قادرة أتحمل هاي الفكرة أكتر.
ما ضل كتير لحد ما ترجعي.
هذا المحل منفاكي أنت، مش منفاي أنا. أنا بحتقر إنه فكرة الحاضر هي مجرد فراغ، مجرد ممر بين اللي كان وبين اللي رح يجي، كأنها تمهيد تذكاري لحياة الآخرة اللي أصلاً ترفض الآن، ترفض إننا موجودين.
هذا الحاضر مش موجود. انت خلقتي بين الجنة والنار زي كل الأجيال اللي سبقتك بهالمحل. كلهم بيحاولوا يرجعوا حاضرهم، يضووه بقصص من التاريخ ويزينوا فراغه بوعود لأشياء رح تيجي. بس الفراغ رح يضله يكبر، وعن قريب رح يفرد حاله بعنف، ورح يبلع كل شي بمرق بطريقه،
زي الثقب الأسود.
إشي زي هيك. هاي الفجوة بتحاول ترجع كل ضوء وكل مادة لمحلاتهم الأصلية، بس هي دايما بتفشل وما بتترك وراها إلا هالة كبيرة من الفراغ. نظري أمي وأبوي صاروا يشبهوا بعض هلأ. لما بلشت أشوف أجزاء من نفسي بكل واحد فيهم صار العكس برضه صحيح. أنا السبب اللي خلاهم يصيروا يشبهوا بعض. بيفرض لغته وبعكس بالماضي المعنى تبع اللحظة هاي. الماضي ما كان، الماضي هو بس هلأ. هاي اللحظات برضو رح تختفي هي كمان. لما بيجي وقتنا هذا الوقت مش رح يكون تبعنا، احنا رح نكون بس أرشيف لغيرنا عشان يقدروا يلاقوا المعنى.
بس لأنه مبدأ وجودي مصطنع مش معناه إنه هو الحقيقي من وجودك. البشر بتضلها تنسى هذا الإشي. بيربونا على ذكريات تشكلت قبل وقتنا، بعلمونا نتمسك بس باللي جاي. الحزن اللي إحنا حاملينه بيختلف. الحس بالفقدان بفشل لما بيكون تجريدي. أنا ولا عمري شفت محل من هاي المحلات.
عن قريب رح تشوفيها.
كل اللي رح أشوفه هو مدينة أشباح.
بيت لحم كانت دايما مدينة أشباح، والماضي دايما بيسيطر على الحاضر.
أنا ما بآمن بالأشباح، واللي بنعمله هون ما رح يغير الماضي.
فيش حاجة أصلا، الماضي لساته هون سليم زي ما كان دايما.
يمكن الماضي تبعك. أنا كل إشي بعرفه وكل الماضي تبعي هون. كل إشي تاني هو قصص خيالية.
شعوب بأكملها مبنية على القصص الخيالية، والوقائع لحالها بتضلها عقيمة وما بتسمح برؤية جماعية. عن قريب اللي إحنا حققناه هون رح يخلق أسطورة بعد ذاتها، وإنتي رح تكوني جزء منها.
أنا ما بتهمني الشعوب اللي بتحكي عنها، لا قصصهم ولا طقوسهم ولا تكرار كل الكليشيهات تبعتهم. هذا النضال، هاي الأرض، هاي المواسم، هاي الذاكرة اللي كلها استعارات، هاي الروايح، هذا النسيج، هذا التاريخ اللي قلصتوه لأكم من رمز وأكم من وثن، هذا القداس اللي بأرخ فقداننا، هذا الطاعون، هاي الكوارث، هذا الرحيل.
كل رحيل قبل هيك.
المشكلة مع النوستالجيا أنها بتسليكي لحد ما كل شيء متعلقة فيه يتلاشى ويختفي، تعطيكي شعور بالأمان لكل شيء عندك، لحد ما كل شيء يتحلل يوم بعد يوم.
بس إحنا خسرنا جيل كامل.
مخزونكم الأصلي من الأطفال الموروثي، المادة اللي أنا خلقت منها رجعت انخلقت على صورتهم ومثالهم.
مظبوط، وذكرياتهم ما كان لازم ينفقدها هي كمان.
فكرتي إنه هذا الفقدان ضروري عشان نبدأ من جديد؟
النسيان ما بيحميكي من إعادة أغلاط الماضي.
يمكن المرة الجاي ما يكونوا أخطاء.
يمكن لا، بس على الأقل بكون عندك المعلومات الكافية واللازمة عشان تاخدي هذا القرار. الذاكرة ما بتفرق بين الحقيقة والخيال. احنا صلنا فترة طويلة واحنا بندون وبنفتح السجلات وبنأرشف، بس فشلنا نفهم إنه الجزء الوحيد بأي حجة واللي مش ممكن المساومة عليه هو العاطفي.
أكتر إشي بخوفني هي الذكريات اللي بكون عارفة إنها دخيلة علي، لأنها هالقد حية صعب أعتبرها ذكريات حد تاني. أنا بعرف القصص اللي بتنقلي، بعرف نهايتها حتى قبل ما تكتمل، كأني أنا نفسي شاهدة عليها. أنا ولا عمري شفت شروق الشمس أو غروبها، بس بتذكر الفجر والغسق. بتذكر كيف مشيت تحت الشتاء وقميص المبلول الفجر والغسق. بتذكر لهب النار يدفيلي وجهي. بحلم بموسم الزيتون.
وأنا كمان. احنا بحاجة إنك تحافظي على هدول الصور.
على الذاكرة.
أنا بطلت متأكدة شو همي. انت بتتذكري إنك شفتي أشياء حتى لو إنه الشخص اللي شافهم ما كان انتي.
في مشاهد مغبشة وباهتة أكتر من غيرها.
هاي هي الطريقة اللي فيها عقلك بيحافظ على التسلسل الزمني.
عنا هون تحت الأرض كل التحولات بتكون حادة. سر واحد بحول النهار لليل.
إذا شاهدنا هذين الفيلمين معا للاريسا صنصور، نيشن ستيت وإن فيترو. وبعد مشاهدة هذين الفيلمين ننتقل مباشرة إلى حوار مع لاريسا حول هذين الفيلمين، وربما أبعد من ذلك حول أعمالها بشكل عام. أنقل الكلمة إلى مرال مكريديتشيان، وهي نائبة مديرة الصندوق العربي للثقافة والفنون آفاق، والتي ستقود الحوار مع لاريسا باللغة الإنجليزية، نظرا إلى أن لاريسا تفضل التعبير عن أعمالها ربما من باب التعبير عن المصطلحات بدقة باللغة الإنجليزية. ولكن طبعا من يفضل متابعة الحوار باللغة العربية أو الفرنسية عليه التوجه إلى خانة الترجمة interpretation interpretation واختيار اللغة التي يريدها. كما نذكر بأن بإمكانكم طرح أسئلتكم بأي لغة، بالعربية أو بالفرنسية أو بالإنجليزية، بغض النظر عن لغة هذا الحوار بالذات. الآن أنقل إليك دفة الحوار. مرال، تفضلي.
Shukran, Ilyas. Thank you. I hope everyone enjoyed the screening. I myself had seen Nation State a while ago, but only recently saw In Vitro, and just now for the third time, I think. And I found the parallels between the two and the time that has passed between the two very interesting, and I will get into that a bit later. Because when I was watching In Vitro, so I rewatched Nation State for this talk, before the talk, and I watched In Vitro recently, and it was very interesting to me to see the progression of some ideas that are both present in both films, and how they developed from 2012 and to In Vitro that is more recent. Larissa, I will start with something that that has been, I've had in mind since I watched In Vitro, but also I can relate it to Nation State later. In Vitro, there's the idea of all forms of memory, whether they're archives or inherited memories, they hold us back. But there's also the idea, it's very present, that there's a very thin line. It's the line between our attachment to collective memory, especially to a traumatic one, is very blurry. And as an anchor that keeps us attached to our past, but also as the foundation to build for the future. So that line is quite blurry, and I know that, it's very clear that the two characters are in disagreement about the idea of past and future, and the now that is only transitional. And I was wondering if you could tell us more about where do you see where do you place the Palestinian identity in this rift between both temporalities, but also both generations? It's also generational. It's also one of them has lived the memories, the other one has just inherited them. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Maral. I think with In Vitro, it very much continues my kind of interest in what an identity in trauma looks like, or how it transpires. And in the case of Palestinians, obviously, we always think of the past or trauma kind of cemented in 1948 with the exodus of the Palestinian people. And we're constantly projecting for a future where we we hope for a Palestinian state. And somehow the present is kind of like in a limbo, where it kind of hangs in between those two. And it's some sort of void in a way, where it becomes almost a burden that you miss every day with with it not being an active kind of entity, but rather something like a corridor that connects you with the past and the future. And that's how I somehow find it much easier to work with sci-fi as a genre in this, when I talk about these issues, because there's a way of kind of talking outside of the kind of the present political jargon, or what's expected of you as a Palestinian or a Palestinian artist who's commenting on these issues. And the rift between those two generations in vitro is obviously one that is not just unique to the Palestinian people, but it's kind of something that it could be universally related to. In the case of in vitro, it takes on kind of many layers. One is that there are two generations. And the most simplest of kind of interpretations, it would be a Palestinian generation that has lived through the exodus of 1948, the Nakba, and a newer generation that feel like they have or experienced all of what their parents have, but have never really gone through the thing. I mean, there are Palestinians who actually were born outside of Palestine. They've never set foot in Palestine, but yet are so convinced of almost like the emotions of what their parents have gone through. And in vitro kind of takes that into the sci-fi realm, where the new generation is born underground. They've never seen the face of the earth. And so they kind of inherited all of their parents' trauma and what they've experienced above earth. And in a way, it kind of is a testament to what really Palestinians, in the diaspora are going through. I think it's a very easy kind of straightforward comment on the diaspora, but I wanted to kind of also open it up to a kind of a wider dialogue, and I situated it in kind of an environmental disaster where it happens post-apocalypse, and kind of try to understand what all this vocabulary or all this kind of baggage that we have inherited, what meaning does it have when all meaning is gone, sort of after a disaster of an environmental nature. So this is maybe, just to give you a very basic idea of how I started working on it.
And I had noted down when you mentioned sci-fi and the genre, the use of the genre, that was actually one of my questions, because I was reading about your earlier work that has more of a documentary approach, and one of my questions was the switch to, or the development towards sci-fi as a genre for your works. What did it allow you that documentary did not allow, but also was it also a tool to both the use of sci-fi and placing in vitro and in the aftermath of a climate apocalypse that is, global? It's not local. It's not only, it does not only belong to the Palestinian, to Palestine. It's a global issue. So is that a tool that that kind of makes you approach the issue and present the reality of the Palestinian people to a wider audience?
In a way, yes, but also it does other things. I think I started kind of staying clear of having more documentary approach films, and I think I've never really worked with documentary, but kind of I just always wanted to document what's really happening in Palestine, because I mean, I was born in Bethlehem and I was raised in Bethlehem, but I've lived most of my life abroad because I had to leave after the first Intifada. And so for me, my connection to the place is a very particular one. And every time I go back, it changes dramatically. I think the way the landscape and ethnographically is also changing is quite fast. That it almost feels like it's going to be erased before you know it. So for me, the idea of bringing a camera, not like making a painting or something that has to be kind of unquestionable, that you have the camera is documenting what you're looking at. Was
exact moment.
That moment and was very important for me, and it was almost like important for me to document myself and my family as well in those works, almost as a kind of a souvenir of this ever happened, or kind of a reminder that this is true, that there was a Bethlehem and there are Palestinian people, and because things are moving so fast and things are changing and they don't look the way they used to look, or they look now, and that was important for some time. But there's also a fatigue of constantly looking at Palestinians through that lens, and I just thought that it's a disadvantage to always be kind of on the other side of the analyzer. So you're the one who's being analyzed, and so I wanted to kind of have a role flip of who's commenting, who's in the picture, through what lens do you see this, and I felt that using a genre that we kind of associate with like male, white, the sci-fi genre, that's really just kind of limited to a very particular places of production, and was almost taking control of, and also saying, well, I'm a citizen of the world, and I have also, I want to take these tools and use them, and I have the right to use them. And in a way, also the sci-fi allows you to not be dictated by how you're supposed to be talking about this problem. And in that way, it's kind of, it opens a window in which one can comment and find a completely different kind of scenario of talking about this that is not kind of limited to what we're used to, especially when we're talking about war-torn zones or, occupation, colonization, all these issues that we are so used to looking at them from a very particular way, and we're expected to see them done in a particular way. So it's by no means a way of kind of running away from the problems. On the contrary, it's actually a very hard way of trying to tackle these issues, but through sci-fi.
Mm-hmm. And yes, it's also, I'm wondering, I myself see it as a courageous way to put out the subject of memory, collective memory, and reclaiming lands as or being attached to our history, our memories, collective trauma. I find it very courageous to the premise of that being, an obstacle for our future is a very courageous step. And I was wondering how has the audience, especially the Palestinian audience, has accepted that? What has been the reaction?
It has been overwhelmingly positive. So I think the fact that it's very hard to really kind of say where I'm situated as a director when it comes to these two opposing kind of views. It's well, I come from a younger generation, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I I'm taking sides in any way, but it's important to kind of acknowledge that we have this problem, that a lot of the fact that we are holding on to certain signifiers of what it means to be Palestinian or what identifies us as Palestinians, because we are being erased, are actually a hurdle to moving on. And this the film is kind of trying to question what it means for kind of what these signifiers mean, and why are they there, and how do we kind of activate them. And I think in Nation State, that's kind of was the focus of the film. How do you kind of activate all these symbols that we kind of associate with Palestinianness, like you know, the olive tree, the right of return, all these. So it's kind of over the top, kind of full of symbols that appear in a building that's looks like a museum. So they kind of, all these symbols become kind of like artifacts displayed in a museum. And in vitro kind of tries to follow on that and tries to understand how do we from that point on actually go back to a place where we join kind of historical time. Because I feel with the erection of Israel, the Jewish people kind of have entered historical time from the mythological time, and the Palestinians have been thrown into a kind of parallel universe that is mimicking sci-fi as well, where we're now trying to get back into being part of that, you know, chronological time, where homogeneous time. So that is, yeah, a kind of a strong part of what I'm dealing with. Yeah.
And I mean, that also reminds me of another parallel that I did when I watched the two films back to back. In Nation State, you mentioned the artifacts, you know, the symbols that are used to represent Palestinianness, whether it's the flag, the olive tree, the right to return key, the food, gastronomy also, you know, and so there basically the artifacts are inherited. They're kind of in a sterile environment, very clean, you know, very glossy, and they're just symbols. They stay at the level of symbols. And whereas in vitro, there is also something like that. And I'm not sure if I interpreted it correctly, or at least that's my interpretation, that the preservation of, for example, the plants, that the nature that are very inherent to the region, to Palestine. That's kind of that's a more living example of how we can preserve cultural heritage, as opposed to the artifacts that have become that have been put in museums, and they inherently they are more present in what we represent, in how we represent, how Palestinians represented in the collective memory of Palestinians, but also to the outside world. So that was interesting for me, and I don't. That's my interpretation, that in vitro sees there is a continuation, there is a future in vitro, and it is not done through these, you know, to this attachment to our artifacts and symbols, but through a living thing that is actually the preservation of indigenous plants.
Yeah, it's interesting that you would say this, but yeah, there was a lot of kind of research going into what heirloom seeds, kind of what's happening with heirloom seeds in Palestine, because there's a lot of disappearance of seeds because of the occupation for various reasons of there being no more kind of land to cultivate the land, because everybody is kind of crowded and there's whatever land we have is being used up for building houses and for a lot of restrictions that Israel has on Palestinians, and with the water supply, that's also we have restrictions from Israel. So that was a topic that I wanted to pursue in the film, and kind of also bring it into a wider kind of dialogue, or the context of where we are at as a humanity, and the preservation of our crops, and what happens when everything disappears, and with the climate disaster. But also it becomes kind of a good tool to kind of understand what it means to then to identity. What does, you know, preservation of the crops, or the seeds, or the plants that you're used to, how could they again become kind of another reference to this continuation of a people, and where does it end? And when they do go underground, well, supposedly in the film, a bunch of scientists run to the bunker, and they kind of carry with them whatever seeds they manage to preserve, as well as the seeds of their children, and what's meant with that is that they actually clone their children. So their children that died during the apocalypse, they preserve, and then they program with memories of their own. So again, the memories of the plant kind of echoes the memories that are being explored of what is collective, what is personal memory, and also what is state memory, and on a wider note, what's planetary memory. So all of these kind of gel kind of together to kind of create a platform by which all these, you know, issues can be discussed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, I don't know if we still have time, but I have one more. Are we okay with the time?
تفضلي مرال. نعم، يمكن طرح سؤالين طرفك بعد. تفضلي.
All right. Okay. So Larissa, I'm actually a bit conflicted about what I'm taking away from watching the two films, especially back to back, because I was, like I said in the beginning, I had watched Nation State before, and I recently watched In Vitro, and then I this morning I was watching them as well to prepare for today. And so in Nation State, everything is glossy, everything is clean. It's satirical, you know. The locations are reduced to signage, and but there is, you know, like the poster says, it's, you know, living the high life, and that shows also in the, I mean, in all the art direction, in the glossiness of everything. Whereas but yeah, so okay, let me rephrase that. So, you know, everything is bright there, everything is super clean, but we feel that, okay, this is an imagined statehood of Palestine, and at the same time, but it's an imagined statehood. Whereas in Vitro, we are underground, everything looks bleak, very brutalist architecture. But there is still, like I said in the beginning, that there is this, like I said before, the story of the plants and preservation of nature, and placing placing Palestine as the microcosm of everything is happening in the world in terms of climate change, global warming, and basically between the two films, I do see a redefinition of a nation state. I see the redefinition of what does it mean to have. It's obsolete. Nation states are becoming obsolete. Is that something that you would like to comment on, or is that because that's my takeaway from watching the two films together?
I'm very interested in what nation states mean. Obviously, in nation state, it's a kind of a comment on the estates as in project buildings. I think, I'm not sure, in the UK they're called estates, so it's places for that buildings that are built for people who are disadvantaged. Mm-hmm. So this was a nation estate. But my interest in nation states, you can see it already from Space Exodus. I would say it's my first sci-fi film from 2009, where you see me as the first Palestinian astronaut landing on the moon. And I try to get in touch with Jerusalem, where I was born, and I don't get any answer. So I float into space, and I don't hear an answer back. And it kind of references Kubrick's A Space Odyssey, and also the American landing on the moon, by saying, Jerusalem, we have a problem, everything's fine, we're back on track. So obviously it is the kind of the first installment of the sci-fi trilogy, which is Space Exodus, is when I actually am trying to get in touch with the nation that I'm, but I don't hear an answer. And the nation state is kind of, in the most basic of interpretations, it would be the lack of actually land to build on. So when we speak of a viable Palestinian state, it's very hard to understand what it looks like when you actually come from Palestine. So there's negotiations happening, but actually on the ground, it's like a Swiss cheese. It's they're just, if you imagine, Israel owns the whole land, and they also have the biggest living room. They have the corridor, all the corridors, and the main entrance to the whole house. So how do you really go from even one Palestinian town to another is impossible without crossing Israeli checkpoints. So the idea of a viable Palestinian state can only kind of, if you think of it in a sci-fi way, could only work vertically. So that's how the nation state came about. And this film was followed by In the Future, the Eight from the Finest Porcelain from 2016, where a kind of a rebel leader who calls herself a terrorist, a narrative terrorist, she calls herself, and she wants to change the course of history. So she has an outlandish project of planting kind of porcelain plates that carry the DNA of Palestinianness, and they have like a keffiyeh pattern in various parts of Palestine for future archaeologists to excavate and find out that this nation has existed. So these three works constitute the sci-fi trilogy that I've been working on for almost 10 years. And they deal with nation states in different ways. But with In Vitro, it kind of tries to place it in the context of an environmental disaster and in the context of the rise of nationalism around the world, and kind of asks, where are we at now in case of an urgent and human disaster? And it's very strange for me that this happened just before the pandemic, because I felt that overnight, all of a sudden, we find ourselves in a bunker, can't leave, and nobody's prepared for it because we're constantly talking about, make America great again, or bringing back the values of yesteryear in the UK, and these are the questions that in vitro asks.
Mm. And also I mean, what are the strategies that are we ready? Like you were saying, that we're no one's prepared for it, and whether globally or locally for Palestinians, if these ideas about our past and collective memory and how to preserve our identity and cultural identity in our land, if they are outdated somehow and are, there is a décalage in a way with what is happening in the now, in the present. So what are our strategies, and are we ready? And so my question is, and I think that this would be my last question, and yes, how do you see your role as an artist, as a filmmaker, in shaping new strategies? Is there, yes, where is the artist and the filmmaker's place in the creation of new strategies for the future?
Yeah, it's a difficult question because because I work with I comment on politics, but I'm not a politician. So sometimes I often get kind of contacted by political activists, or I was even had to attend a lot of UN conferences because of various incidents I was in, where because of artistic freedom of expression, which is part of freedom of expression in general. But I find those particular, I find it being placed in such a context is difficult for me, because I feel that art is very potent, but only if it functions according to its own rules. But there is kind of a convergence, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a bigger debate, and that's why I got invited to the UN. And I think the strategy is for me, constantly revise and question whatever becomes the norm. So I think as artists, it's kind of maybe that's the first and foremost thing you want to do, is to always revise and question and subvert whatever we come to think is the norm. But yeah, I do think that if artists I come from a visual background, that's why I always refer to myself as an artist, although I work with films. But I think if artists did not affect political change, then they wouldn't be historically and now in that much trouble as they get, because there is a reason why there's constantly a need to silence artists or censor them from showing their work.
Yeah, thank you, Larissa. Very interesting for me. I hope everyone enjoyed as well. And yes, should we open the floor for questions?
شكرا. نعم طبعا، شكرا لاريسا ومرال على هذا الحوار الشائق. جميل، شكرا. الآن كما ذكرت مرال نفتح باب النقاش مع جمهور المتابعين والمتابعات عبر منصة زوم وعبر صفحة مجلس في فيسبوك. كما ذكرت في البداية، يمكن طرح السؤال بأي لغة من اللغات الثلاث، الإنجليزية أو العربية أو الفرنسية. الأسئلة الإنجليزية ستتولى زميلتي مرال طرحها، أما أنا فسأتولى طرح الأسئلة باللغتين العربية والفرنسية. وطبعا لك لاريسا أن تجيبي باللغة أيضا التي تريحك، وطبعا يمكنك أن تلجئي كما المتابعين والمتابعات إلى خانة الترجمة في حال رغبت في ترجمة الحصول على الترجمة للسؤال. سأبدأ بمجموعة أسئلة. لدينا أسئلة كثيرة وجيدة على صفحتنا في فيسبوك، معظمها باللغة العربية. سأبدأ بالسؤال الأول لاريسا، وهذه الأسئلة يعني متمحورة في جلها حول الفيلم الثاني إن فيترو المختبر. أبدأ بالسؤال الأول. في الفيلم الثاني المختبر تبرز فكرة الذاكرة الماضي وعلاقته بالحاضر. نشعر أن هناك ورطة ما تختبئ في عرض الفكرة، بحيث يكون البقاء في الذاكرة أو الماضي هو النقطة التي ننطلق منها في اتجاه الحاضر الذي نظنه هو الورطة، لأنه يتكشف في علاقتنا بالماضي، فيصبح هو الذي يعرف الماضي ومعمل صناعة الذاكرة. ولكن في هذا العرض، وأن نظرنا إليه كتركيب سواء من جانب الحوارات الداخلية أو المشاهد في الفيلم، سنجد عكس ذلك. السؤال: أين تكمن الورطة؟ هل هي في طريقة عرض المادة أم في فكرتها نفسها؟ أم هو تركيب حاول أن يعالج لكن هذا ليس دوره الأساسي؟ إذن الحديث عن الورطة.
الورطة. Yeah, I think I kind of did discuss it a little bit in the beginning of that our trauma lies in 1948 and in the Nakba, and in the idea that this is where our identity kind of got stuck. We're kind of stuck in time, and yet we keep on talking about the future and our idea of what our nation state would look like. Yet the present is disappearing before us, because what's happening in the present is actually what's happening on the ground. And what's happening on the ground is something that probably only Palestinians know of, daily life, from getting from A to B, and what's every new decision that was made, how that affects their daily life. This idea of what is Palestinian as well is actually more kind of elaborated in the diaspora rather than in Palestinians who live in Palestine, because it is a stuck kind of moment. It's a moment in time. And I wanted to kind of understand how we can actually join a kind of a chronological time where you're not kind of reliving a particular moment. I think when I showed this film first, I showed it at the Venice Biennale at the Danish Pavilion, and I showed it with a sculpture in the opposite room, and the sculpture was a big black sphere that it was called the Memorial of Lost Time. And for me, that sphere that you see in the film is that it's kind of a repository of a negotiation between past and present, and what it means for that, for Alia, who's the main figure, what it means for her to negotiate all this information in her space. So it is, I find the present in all of In Vitro to be kind of nothing more than a burden for Alia in the film. She is resentful of the fact that her present is not viewed as real, and what is real is actually what the earth used to be. So it's kind of what Palestine used to be. So what it is now is just it's like either a void, or if it's transitory space where it's going from what it used to be and what is gonna happen. But we've been going through this for 80 years now. So it's kind of, it feels like there needs to be a refocusing of energy, of understanding where the problem lies, rather than constantly kind of recite this mantra of, yes, this happened to us and this is where we want to be.
عطفاً على هذا السؤال وعلى جوابك، وانطلاقاً من جوابك هذا، سؤال يفتح باب علاقتنا بالمدينة، بيت لحم أو أي مدينة أخرى. كيف تبدأ؟ كيف تبدأ علاقتنا بالمدينة، بيت لحم أو أي مدينة أخرى؟ كذاكرة ماضٍ أم كحاضر نعيشه؟ وأين تعاد هذه العلاقة؟ في شعورنا بالحاضر أم في علاقتنا بالماضي؟
It's very particular with Bethlehem because Bethlehem is such a historical town. It's like it lives in the hearts of everyone in the world. But it doesn't mean the same to Palestinians who live in Bethlehem. I mean, Bethlehem is like, I think, has a history of 5,000 years. It's a very old city. It has, is mostly, associated with the birth of Christ. So it's, you cannot think of it without thinking of it as the historical city that it is. So my relationship with Bethlehem, even though I grew up there, also is mixed with everything that is kind of Bethlehem provides from that kind of religious setting. But even so, it constantly changed for me. So when I grew up, it was a very Mediterranean, quiet town. There weren't many people in it. There were lots of tourists because the tourists always come to Bethlehem to see the Nativity Church. But now it has become, with the erection of the Israeli wall, a lot of villages from surrounding Bethlehem, villagers from around moved into Bethlehem and now are part of the makeup of the city. So it completely changed the feeling of that city. So now it's a very crowded place. It also relies on itself for, for many things that me growing up, we would just go to Jerusalem to shop or for schools or anything of the sort. Was we were very reliant on Jerusalem, but now it's Bethlehem is something else. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question if it's a very concrete question or if the question was more abstract.
لا، يعني أعتقد أن الإجابة وصلت في كلتا الحالتين. يعني سواء كان السؤال يعني يلامس واقعا ملموسا أم مجردا. يعني في كلتا الحالتين أعتقد أن المقاربة التي قدمتها تقدم جوابا عن هذا السؤال. أنتقل إلى سؤال ربما ينطوي على بعد تقني أكثر. الأرشيف. ظهر مستوى واحد من الأرشيف وهو علاقتنا بالأرشيف، ولكن الأرشيف هنا يحضر كجسد حي متحرك يخلق ويعاد وينتج. أين يتحرك هنا كسلطة، أو كيف تفسر علاقته بالسلطة من خلال مشاهد الفيلم؟
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. It's one of the things that I really had to think very hard about when I used the archives. And the archives, I've used them from UNRWA as one source, and another one was the Imperial War Museum. And I happened to have, just when I was making In Vitro, that those archives were remastered at the Imperial War Museum. So they actually look very crisp, but they're 100 years old. And I wanted to create that tension between what is fiction, what is real, and what is collective memory, what is personal memory, from kind of reiterating the same place over and over again. So you see In Vitro, you see Nativity Church in the archives, as well as In Vitro again, the Nativity Church again during the present time, and the Nativity Church after the apocalypse. So that was an important part. And the fact that all of the film was in black and white was quite important to kind of have a way of blending in all this footage with the archives and having them almost seamless. So the idea of actually understanding the present only through past and future at kind of, and questioning all these temporal places or spaces was very important. This kind of obfuscation of time and space was very important, and the archives kind of added to them. At some point, Dunya, the dying leader, says that we've spent all our lives archiving, and that reality does not really distinguish between what's real and fiction. And that is part of kind of the dilemma or the trauma that is being addressed in the film of the revisiting of the place, and trying to make sense of it. And the archives kind of try to do that as well. The fact that you have this no distinction between what you have known before and where you are at now.
جميل. نعود إلى حكاية الذاكرة والنسيان والحاضر والماضي. الأسئلة تتركز حول هذا الموضوع. هذا الصراع هو صراع أضداد قوي في الفلسفة الوجودية. نتحدث هنا عن صراع الذاكرة والنسيان والحاضر والماضي. هذا الصراع بين هذه الأضداد، كيف طوعتي أو وظفتي هذا السؤال وتوظفينه اليوم وستوظفينه غدا في خدمة القضية الفلسطينية، وتجعلين منه صراعا متصلا بالهوية؟
It's hard to answer this question because I don't feel like it's my responsibility to find an answer to the Palestinian question, because it's it's one of the hardest problems we have in the world. But of course, I do work. I do comment on what's happening in Palestine, and for me, it's a very personal issue. Obviously, my identity is Palestinian. It informs everything that I do. I cannot extract myself from it. But I think I got very interested in our idea of memory, and I've been really interested in memory studies in general, and especially epigenetics. I'm currently actually working on an opera that takes whatever is being explored in vitro, and kind of just focuses on epigenetics, the idea of inherited memory, and the idea that it is part of our genes and not just something that you kind of inherit by word of mouth, but the trauma actually is something that generations could experience genetically. And that part of science is something that's fascinating for me. In the opera, you kind of you see a mother who is mourning the loss of her child, but it's all taken back all the way to World War I. So actually the cyclicality of the exodus and return is kind of explored in batches throughout, and the fact that this inherited memory is explored on many levels of what it means to have it, culturally inherited, or whether it being cultural or genetic as well. So in that case, I think, the more we talk about things maybe in a more elaborate way and more kind of honest way, rather than kind of repetitive modes of, or reproducing discussions about Palestine, is actually, I think, in the long run, is a better way of really tackling what's happening to the Palestinian question. So I think being kind of having an honesty or a direct way of an interest in the matter, and a lack of fear of actually addressing those is would get us further than kind of abiding by the norms.
سؤال آخر باللغة الفرنسية، ولكن يعني سأحرص على ترجمته إلى اللغة العربية كي يفهم من الجميع، خصوصا أن لا ترجمة على فيسبوك. تتحدث طارحة السؤال عن أو ترى في الفيلم الثاني مسألة الذاكرة ولكن أيضا نسيان، بما معناه أن ثمة تغوى أو طغيان في مكان ما أو سطوة للنسيان حتى، يعني ووجود قوي للنسيان ليس فقط للذاكرة. ينتهي هذا التعليق بسؤال استخلصته طارحة السؤال: ثمة انطباع عن تأثير أو تأثر طفيف في الفيلم من معالجة وثائقية لألان ريني وريثي بان. هل هذا صحيح؟ هل كان هناك تأثر في مكان ما في هذه المعالجة الوثائقية؟
I'm not really sure I understand the references actually, so maybe I need more explanation in order to answer the question.
تمام. ربما هذا دليل على أن هناك لم يكن هناك تأثر بطبيعة الحال، طالما أن الاسمين ليس يعني ليس عمليا يعني هيك قابلين أو مترددين على مسمعك. أنتقل إلى سؤال أيضا مهم: إلى أي مدى تحرصين في أعمالك على إسقاط أو حذف أو محو التصنيفات النمطية بين الشرق والغرب لتشكيل خطاب بتقنيات دول العالم الأول؟
Yeah, I think it's quite important to not. I think the disadvantage that Palestinians find themselves in is that they're constantly are being part of documentaries, and they're kind of either seen as people to feel sorry for, or people to fear their whatever militant groups or whatever the documentary is. And I think that's such a disadvantaged role that I often think that you need to use those tools that are kind of limited to the first world, if you want to, and kind of find a universal language, because as long as the Palestinian question is going to be addressed in a way that it kind of belongs to the periphery, or to a place that kind of needs a certain attention because of its location, and it's not, part of a more general dialogue, the more it will suffer. And part of actually what Maral said at some point, where in vitro kind of situates Bethlehem as the microcosm of world problems, is kind of the catapult of that, that whole scenario of how to kind of refrain from always thinking of from a Western perspective of how do we refrain from thinking of the Palestinian problem as a local problem, but rather start thinking of it as a source of many of our world problems. And I think it's one of those questions where I think living in the UK and understanding the role of the British Empire in the disaster of that has befallen Palestine, for me it's not really okay anymore to even think of the Palestinian problem as a local problem. You have to think about it as actually a problem that you are unable to think about, to talk about as a Westerner, because it implies other things. It implies a lot of revisions of what you are being taught at school, how you understand yourself, a revision of your own history. It involves all of this. So it's much easier for a Westerner to just say, well, it's a local problem. And for me, that is something that needs immediate kind of, attention and revision, around the world.
سؤال آخر قبل أن أنتقل إلى سؤال ختامي. الانتقال من الواقع إلى الخيال العلمي، هل هو انتقال سلس أم هو انتقال صعب؟ وهل يتقبل الناس دائما هذا الخيال؟
Yeah, it's actually a very difficult one because people think of fiction and sci-fi as, belonging to entertainment and not really kind of subjects that should be treated with gravity. And so this is the first hurdle. How do you make your audience actually believe what you're saying, or believe that it's worth following? And another thing is that this is something that's kind of an untrodden. It's a path that has not really been made available before. So I feel that I'm kind of walking blind when I'm working with sci-fi, and I'm trying to address all these topics. So for me, it's quite challenging of how do I find a way of talking about something that's quite serious, and using, tools that, people associate with entertainment or Hollywood, or and actually still maintain a very serious stand when I deliver the final product.
سؤال ختامي. هذا السؤال يعني نختم به هذه الحلقة، وهو سؤال يحمل جانبا تجريديا في مكان ما، تماما كما الفيلمين وتحديدا إن فيترو. هذا السؤال مني أنا، سأضع نفسي يعني موضع الجمهور وأطرحه، لأن جملة لفتتني يعني في الحوار المكتوب بشكل جميل في هذا الفيلم. وأيضا أحيل إلى مقالة نشرت منذ سنتين تقريبا عن إن فيترو. تتحدثين كثيرا عن مفهوم الحنين، النوستالجيا. عبرت بنا جملة في الفيلم تقول النوستالجيا تتحلل، واستخدمتها إحدى البطلتين. وأيضا عنونت إحدى الصحف العربية مقالا عن إن فيترو يوم صدر، وكان العنوان أيضا لافتا: لاريسا صنصور تضع الحنين في المختبر. سؤالي هو: هل فعلا الحنين أو النوستالجيا يتحلل؟ أم يبدو لنا في مكان ما أنه يتحلل ولكنه فعلا يتصدع ولا ينكسر ثم يعيد بناء نفسه؟
I was watching somebody, I can't remember if a film that was followed by a Q&A, and somebody was asked what nostalgia means to them. And I think the answer was that it was a longing to go back home. And it's, I never really thought of nostalgia in that way, but if you think about it in the light of in vitro, and the fact that in vitro basically means life outside of itself, outside of its natural habitat, it becomes quite poignant to understand your home and your idea of the return. To be to go back to home in the Palestinian sense, does it mean to go back to a time and place, or is it really something that then again goes back to the cyclicality of the nature of that trauma? Or so in that sense, I do feel that the idea that it actually disintegrates is kind of, it's not completely descriptive, but the fact that it actually gets disintegrates, then forms again, then disintegrates, and then comes back again, is part of this idea of the return and the exodus. And you see that the whole film again kind of closes on the point where you see Alia is actually going back into the same corridor that she started in. So it doesn't have kind of a natural A to B answer, but a complete, circle, really.
تمام. شكرا لاريسا. أتعبناك بكثرة أسئلتنا، يعني بين مرال وأنا والجمهور ربما أسئلة كثيرة، ولكن شكرا يعني على نفسك الطويل وعلى هذا الحضور وعلى هذه الإجابات أيضا. إذن شكرا لك لاريسا صنصور ضيفتنا في هذه الحلقة، وشكرا طبعا للشركاء الذين ساهموا في تنظيمها: الصندوق العربي للثقافة والفنون آفاق، ومؤسسة المورد الثقافي، ومؤسسة اتجاهات ثقافة مستقلة. شكرا لإلينا ومرال على الحوار أيضا، ولجميع من انضم إلينا عبر زوم وفيسبوك. وطبعا شكرا للمترجمات الأربعة اللواتي يرافقنا دائما بترجمة فورية إلى الإنجليزية والفرنسية. هذه الحلقة سيعاد بثها على صفحة المجلس في فيسبوك وعلى قناته في يوتيوب Arab Council for the Social Sciences. يمكنكم زيارة هذه القناة التي تحتضن مجموعة واسعة من الفيديوهات مثيرة للاهتمام والتي تستحق المشاهدة. موعدنا يتجدد في حلقة مقبلة. جميع تفاصيل هذه الحلقة ننشرها قريبا على منصاتنا الاجتماعية فيسبوك وتويتر وإنستغرام، وعلى موقعنا الإلكتروني acss.org. واكبونا لمزيد من المعلومات. إلى حينها نشكركم على طيب الحضور والتفاعل، وإلى الملتقى. شكرا.
شكرا.
شكرا.